morning, everyone. My name is Lynn Steiner. I am with the Center for Innovation and in Population Health at the University of Kentucky, and I'm going to be moderating this session today along with Michelle Fernando, who will be my co-moderator. In this session, we are here for the Trainer Booster, Getting Race Day Ready, Place Your Bets, with Robin Orlando Price and Alacia Eicher. So if this is where you want to be, you are in the right place. If not, this is your opportunity to find the actual room that you wanted to be in. As I mentioned, we're encouraging you to put your camera on during the session. We know it's a virtual session, but we're trying to replicate the in-person experience as much as possible. So if you are good with that, please put on your camera. I know they're going to have some interactive exercises as well, and so it's always helpful to see people. Also, you want to make sure that your name is up there, reflecting the name that you registered on for the conference. If you prefer to put in your pronouns, you're welcome to do that as well. Let me see if there's what else. So just a few quick things before we get started. So at the end of the presentation, I'll be putting up a slide with the code for those of you that are participating in the game. We'll also be putting up a link for those who are getting CEUs. There'll be a link to a survey. We encourage all people to fill it out, but in particular, those who are wanting to get CEUs. So you need to stay for the whole session in order to do that. And so let me share my screen briefly. So again, this is just the information on the session and also a plug for our YouTube channel. We've just launched a YouTube channel maybe a month or so ago. And so we're encouraging people to go check it out. We've got some resources and a lot of videos, and we're hoping to continue to add content. So check in on it, subscribe, like videos if you like them. Okay, so I think I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Robin and Alacia.
Thank you so much. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Getting Race Day Ready, Place Your Bets. As Lynn said, my name is Robin Orlando Price, and I am here with my colleague and partner in crime, Alacia Eicher. And we hope the next 2 hours is going to be energizing, and I hope we can all really have a good time learning from one another and just really, boosting up some of our trainer skills, but also getting a good sense of adult learning principles. And more than anything, just getting back to, all the things that excite us as trainers. So before we get started, and I think Lynn already covered this, but again, just, if you want to make a comment or ask a question, please absolutely use the chat. Alacia and I are really, really relaxed. I see some of you from last year have joined us again, so welcome back. But we encourage you to, ask questions, so just unmute if you want to do that. And I'm not sure, Alacia, if you had the sign in there about signing in. So we have it in our chat, the link to go ahead and sign in. Now, I know you've signed in for the TCOM conference, but we're also asking you to sign in for us because at the end of this training, we're hoping that we will have developed some ideas. We'll be sharing information with each other, and we always like to send that back to the folks that have participated in our training. So you can either scan the QR code here, and that's using your phone with the camera. You don't take a picture, you just scan your camera over there, and that'll open up a link for you. And if not, if that doesn't work, we also have the link in our chat, and you can just click on that link. And again, it's just going to ask for your name and your email information. There might be your role, I'm not quite sure, but again, it's just for us to be able to follow up and send you the slide deck and some of the resources that we're going to just breeze over in these 2 hours, but we'll actually be able to give you some copies of different instructional material if you're interested. So let's get started here and just, talk a little bit for a few minutes about Alacia and myself, so you know who you're going to be spending these next 2 hours with. I have been involved with TCOM, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, for 19 years. And that is unbelievable to me, and was really fortunate to work with John in the really early days of my career. And I just love and believe so strongly in TCOM, and equally believe so strongly in the power of learning and teaching and how transformational that can be. And I'm so committed to the work of our workforce, whether that's our mental health service coordinators or our child welfare caseworkers, drug and alcohol counselors. Like, they do the hard, critical work. And I just really believe so strongly in my work, in how can I support their work, because ultimately we're serving children and families. And so it's about, how can I provide training? How can I provide resources, coaching to best understand whether it's assessment, whether it's about how to engage, whether it's about how to use this information when you can have good conversations with family members to help them plan those services or help identify natural supports for families. So that's why I've been involved in this work for, my career over 20 years, but 19 years specifically with TCOM. And the last 12 plus years has been all about adult learning and training, and really developing innovative and engaging trainings. So that's what my role is all about. Alacia, if you want to tell a few minutes about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Robin. I just want to say I'm super honored to be here and be able to provide this training to all of you today. I love the energy that we get from just the spirit of TCOM and the energy that we get in this conference. So I'm super excited to be able to kick off the conference with you all. I echo everything Robin says. We really, truly do believe in what TCOM is, as far as really supporting a quality system for the families and individuals we serve. And my role as a senior applied learning and development specialist in Pittsburgh, PA, is primarily to oversee the projects that we do around the assessments, the TCOM assessments, the CANS, the ANZA, and the FAST we use in Allegheny County. So my passion is in training, is in adult learning, but I do also do a lot of project planning on different implementations or different work groups and meetings around really being able to maximize TCOM here in our jurisdiction, and really be able to partner with all of our providers and the different stakeholders within our county. So that's me. And again, so nice to meet you all and so good to be here. Thank you.
Okay. So one of the things as part of the conference, this is just a logistical statement that we have to make, that neither Alacia or I have any financial relationship with TCOM. So that's our disclosure statements. But now we're going to turn it over to what we're calling our TCOM Jockey Pledge. And that's really, I think, our pledge to all of you. And as Alacia said, we're so thankful to be part of this community with all of you, because we learn so much from each and every one of you. Whether you are a new, spanking new trainer and you've just been with TCOM for 6 months or new, or if you are more seasoned and have been around for a while, we so appreciate the learning exchange and the sharing of information. So what we're going to ask you today, though, is a couple things. We're going to ask you to be flexible. So if you've noticed on the agenda, if you've been on Socio and have gotten all set up for the conference, you'll see that we have the training this morning, and we also have the roundtable discussion this afternoon. In many ways, it's going to be both a continuation of the training booster today, but it's also going to be some open-ended conversation. So today this morning, we're going to do some of the booster, but we're going to also continue that this afternoon. So we're hoping some of you that might have not been planning on joining us, maybe you can join us. If not, though, rest assured, we have everything in the slide presentation that you would need, that we would be covering for an entire 4-hour booster session. The other piece is that we really do want to engage in conversation, whether it's this morning or again this afternoon. really to understand how you're looking, whether there are needs about how do you continuously learn and coach your staff or yourself on growing your expertise, your knowledge around TCOM assessments, because there's such a strong training component with TCOM and PRAID and all the different resources that are available. But what do you do? What does your jurisdiction do? Maybe you're affiliated with a university. How do you continuously grow those resources? What are those areas of need? So we're asking you to consider this sort of a two-for. We're going to be doing a lot in this morning session and in this afternoon session. And for those of you that have been a part of any of the workshops that Alacia or myself have done in the past, we really believe in this. We learned this with our Breakthrough Series Collaborative several years ago, and that is to steal shamelessly and share relentlessly. And so we say that to all of you so that if there are things you hear today or at any part of the conference that resonates, that you think, God, I can use that in my work, or, oh, I want to take that back to my county or to my organization because I think this would be a great way to use something, do it. Steal the idea, because that's how we grow the TCOM knowledge. That's how we grow the practice and the philosophy. And then at the same point, I ask you to share relentlessly. Share your ideas. Even if you haven't implemented some of these ideas, but it's just a notion or a thought, share them and spark the conversation, because you can't find a better place in this kind of environment. Even though we're virtual, there's still that TCOM energy. So again, encouraging all of you to steal shamelessly and share relentlessly. And finally, our pledge is we will be open to all the learning possibilities today in these couple of hours. And we ask you also to be open to all the learning possibilities. So that is our pledge to you this morning. I don't know if people should like do a sign. Do you agree with that pledge? Are you cool with that pledge? If you have concerns with that pledge, speak now, because we can add to it. But this is what we want today to be. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that thumbs up. I need to see more faces here. I'm going to change my view. So let's see. Now we really want to hear from all of you. So we are going to ask you to take a few minutes, and there's a link there that Alacia has put in the slide. We're going to try Jamboard, and we are going to ask you if you can just take a minute, if you could just introduce yourself, your name, you can do your last name if you want, and if you could share what's your learning goal. What do you want to take away from today's session? What do you want to learn out of today's session? And when you click on that link, we're having a little bit of activity here, but when you click on that link, it's going to take you to the Jamboard, and Alacia has also placed it in chat. And you will have a screen that's going to come up. And you'll notice here on the side that you should see little sticky tabs. You could click on that sticky tab, and then you can, and I'm not able to show this, Alacia.
Can you all see my screen right now with I have Jamboard up?
Yes. Can everyone see Alacia's screen with the Jamboard?
So once you click on that link, it should take you here, and the sticky tabs are over on this side toolbar. So if you click sticky note, it'll allow you to choose a color and you can answer the question. And if this doesn't work, we have a backup plan, but I've been able to use this successfully.
Now I'm getting some chat, Alacia, that says they do not have the sidebar when they're seeing their Jamboard.
Okay.
So why don't we do this for folks? Well, let me ask, for folks that can see the sticky notes.
We just have to request permission on the top right. It says view mode, and you click on it and then go down and say, and it's going to give you request permission. Alacia or whoever's Jamboard, this is just approve us and we can do it.
Okay. Dan, thank you so much. Top right.
Top right. It says like view only for many people. Where for you it says share. For us it says view.
Yeah, I thought I set it up so it was anyone with the link can access.
I know. And what we're going to do is we're going to call Google and be the millionth person to tell them that this happens to us. It happens all the time. That's why I knew about it.
Thank you, Dan.
So Dan, I'm just wondering where the permissions come to. Do I get a pop-up or something? Oh, you're muted.
Whoever's account this is should be getting a bunch of emails right now asking for permission.
Okay, let me see.
Well, let me say this, folks. For those of you that are able to do this, and maybe you're not, and I don't know how quickly Alacia is going to be able to approve, we are going to, Alacia, can you move to the next, can you have the other slide up so we can annotate? Because as trainers, and you all know this, you always have to have a plan B and a plan C, which we do a lot of. So what I'm going to try now is if you would all be willing to annotate in this screen. And there's about, okay, so everyone is having trouble with that. So why don't we just move here to the annotate? That's all about being flexible. Look at that. Good thing we did our first pledge, people. So I'm not sure if you were all familiar with Annotate. Last year, a lot of us were so new, but we've been remote for so long, this might not be that new for folks. But what we're going to ask you to do is go onto your screen where it says View Options and click on Annotate. Oh, look at some of you are already going ahead. Jessica, go. And if you could put your name anywhere on any of these blocks, hopefully there'll be enough space. And if you could just write your name. And again, if you could say, what is your learning goal today? And hopefully it is not to learn how to do the Jamboard, but you know what, if that is what it is, that's a good goal. And let's take a few minutes to write down what those goals are. Now, if you're struggling to do this, also use the chat because we'll be looking at the chat as well. So whatever's most comfortable for you, but take a minute and just think for a second and clear your mind, you know, because I should have started with that because it's really important. Clear your mind. What is it that you'd like to learn from each other? And maybe, I don't know if I can fix this so they're not on top of each other.
Yeah, that's the thing with the annotation is that the space is limited. That's why I'm bummed about Jamboard, but I'm not getting any emails. That's why I'm confused.
Let's do half of you in chat, half of you in Jamboard. And it'll just all come together.
I think it's very cool looking how the Christy on top of Sharon there.
It's all about the integration.
Yeah, right. It almost looks like a work of art.
Got this.
Okay, I'm going to give you all a few minutes and then I'm going to maybe do some calling out here.
We got some things coming into chat too.
Good, good. Thank you all for being flexible. That's what it's all about.
That's some good stuff.
Okay. So as you are all sharing here, I think we could do some stuff here. Let's read some things here. So Lynn, I am going to ask you if you wouldn't mind. Would you mind reading some of the stuff in chat? Some of the comments in chat?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Let me find the first one. Okay, so Sarah Kane, her goal is to increase her training skill set.
Okay.
Lori, I'm sorry, Lori, I may not pronounce your name correctly. Schenecker, learning to address barriers in a TCOM training and application.
Okay.
Amy Guevara from the Division of Child and Family Services in Nevada. She would like to learn skills to feel more confident as a trainer. Karen Chandler from Las Vegas, Nevada wants to learn new creative training methods.
Terrific.
Mary Nichols would like to have more tools in her trainer toolbox. Heather Sullivan from Marshall University wants to learn new techniques to use in her virtual trainings.
Oh, good, good.
Barry Wexler wants to learn to be flexible in facilitating. She says this is a key to increase skills and confidence.
Okay.
Jesse Blankenship with Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, hopes to bring back some tips for better navigating virtual training.
Okay.
Bethany Blank wants to become a better trainer. Jennifer Latham from Vanderbilt, COE Goa, to learn strategies for working staff who are resistant or think training is just another box to check off. And Jessica Russo, NYSOPWDD, her goal is to learn more skills to assist CANS assessors in their process. Cynthia Schmelty, goal is to enhance training skills. Let's see, Laura Paglia, to learn skills in engaging in overworked staff, new methods and skills trained virtually. Bretland Smith, to increase knowledge on how to interpret TCOM data for outcome measures. And I think that's all the chat responses at the moment.
Great, thank you. Thank you guys for all of you that put stuff in chat. I'm going to pull up some things here that I see on the board. And again, we're seeing some themes here. I see a couple. Nina has this. I saw someone else have it again about virtual training, getting ideas that are useful in the virtual world, because, you know, it is different, right? And several of you have said that in chat, some ideas on how to train in the virtual world. I think you can't just take that typical training that you've done maybe in the past and just put it into this Zoom format. So we definitely are going to go over some tips today. If we don't go into a lot of detail, we can send you a lot of information or do some follow-up, because that's something we have done quite a bit of work on. I hear, you know, about overworked staff, and I think that's really, really something that is just such a main concern, because that's always going to be there, right? We always have staff and the workforce that are overworked, they are multitasking. How do they come into a training where it's not, what did someone say, where they're just checking off that box? How do we get them to be able to even settle in and make space in their brain and be committed to the training? So thinking about how do you use some of the mindfulness practices, because mindfulness is based in curiosity and being present. So how do you put some of those elements within your training? How can you be intentional in that way? So those again are different examples of techniques we're going to share with all of you. And again, just sort of explore this. So I'm hoping that, you know, a lot of you were saying becoming a better trainer. Well, there's all sorts of ways we can become a better trainer. I'm curious, for those of you that said you want to become a better trainer, does anyone want to share, if they're willing to, you know, unmute their mic? Is there anything specific when you say be a better trainer? What is it? Is it a better trainer in, I want to feel more comfortable speaking about a certain topic? Is it, I want to learn more about a certain technology? I'm just curious if folks would be willing to share. And I'm going to try to change my view so I can see more of you.
So Robin, I think for me, what I was sort of referencing would be more how to engage people in the TCOM, in my case, CANS New York material,
Okay.
just trying to increase the desire of folks to be in the training. So it's not just something they have to do, but, you know, more of an actual enjoyable experience.
Got it. Okay. Sarah, if I can ask you a really quick question.
Sure.
Do you do a day-long training, or do you have them broken up, the training?
Oh, no, we've got them broken up, which I think has been very helpful. So we tend to do anywhere between 2 to 3 hours, roughly.
Oh, you are ahead of the game. That's awesome. That's awesome. So just again, more about how we can get them more engaged or bought into the process. Is that what you're
Yeah, and I don't think it has so much to do with necessarily the virtual platform. I've only been doing the CANs in the virtual platform because the pandemic was ongoing when I stepped into the position, but I've done a lot of training in person as well. And so I think it's less about the transfer of skills over from one to the other and more just, again, increasing folks' enthusiasm around the actual tool, material, all that stuff.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Thank you. Anybody else want to add before we, again, any specific need that you want to bring up before we move on? Kim, I
Hi,
see you.
Robin.
Yeah.
This is Kim from Contra Costa County in California. And similar to what Sarah just said, I'm just trying to, in California, the cans and ANZA, well, cans for now, became a mandate. So, so that sort of changed views on it. So we really want to help people see just how useful it is and ways to use it. And we've now merged our CANS and ANZA together. So CANZA, so we're doing a combined training, which we did a little Zoolander theme to try to make it kind of fun and virtual. We unbiasedly stole from Dan's lovely video, and we played that at all of our staff meeting to say, here's how you can do a CANS virtually with a young person. And so that was well received, but I think just helping people see the value of it as compared to another thing I have to do is what I would like to develop more in this training.
Okay, great.
And it's my third round with you all, so I get so
Kim.
much each time.
The pressure's on. Well,
I know. Get so much from you all, so appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I think it's an ongoing challenge, right? It's about,
Yeah.
What are the ways that we can think, maybe trying something a little bit differently, or, again, engaging in some of the new technology. I think it's brilliant that you used Dan's video. Again, I think for workers to be able to see things, to see how it's done, it can be really helpful, because a lot of times it's just, I want to see something that'll make it feel a little bit easier, and then we can build off of that. So these are great ideas. And again, let's see where we can get today with all of these ideas. This is wonderful. Thanks, everybody. All right, I'm going to move on, and we're going to keep those thoughts and ideas coming, because we're going to save the chat. And again, we'll follow up with, oh, Dan, you're getting lots of shout outs. That's awesome. I love to see technology being used and folks being creative. So again, just to review, what are we going to do today throughout this morning and this afternoon? Really looking at, new ideas, new and innovative and engaging techniques that will maximize retention with the TCOM philosophy. And again, the use of assessments. We really want folks not to just go through the training because they have to go through the training and they have to get certified, right? But that they walk away feeling like, okay, what's the next step? How do I become more competent? How do I become more comfortable with this? How do I use it in a meaningful way? So that's what we're really looking to do. And then again, really incorporating those adult learning principles into the TCOM training so that we can get a higher level of investment, more motivation, and more, the hope is retention with our trainees and our learners. And Alacia is going to spend a little bit of time on some of that. So I'm hoping we can meet some of those needs for you. So what we're going to be doing, and like I said, we're going to do it somewhat quickly because of how this has been scheduled out, but we are going to, this is our TCOM Derby agenda today. We're going to look at some guiding values and then go into some adult learning principles. Again, the idea of just understanding what can we really be thinking about intentionally as we try to plan out different techniques for our learners. And then I think a lot of you are probably already doing this, but this idea of more of a spaced education model, these building blocks, so you can be concise, really short with the topics that you're training on, and then building from that. And again, techniques for the virtual world. We have lots of different things we do. We're going to dive in on knowing your audience and setting the tone. Setting the tone becomes critical, especially with getting that engagement for our staff. And then we're probably going to have to end the workshop at that point. This afternoon, if you're able to join us, again, depending on the mix of folks that'll be joining us in the afternoon, we'll look at just some ideas about 6 key principles, the rating scale, and doing vignette and item review. But then we're also going to have some conversation about what we need to do to continue that learning process for both ourselves as trainers, but then also for our workforce and our staff. So we've got a lot going on, and I feel like I'm talking a lot, which kind of really goes against our wisdom here as trainers, but we want to pack in a lot today. So Alacia, should we shift over to the road to the Derby? And I'm loving seeing all the information being shared in chat. That's terrific. Keep it going, folks. So I want to just share with all of you very, very quickly that when I started out doing CANS training, I was not familiar or schooled in adult learning principles. And my biggest concern was, how do I make sure that people are going to be certified in the CANS? And how do I make sure that they don't murder me when I have to do the vignette ratings, because people don't like that part of the training and they get frustrated and then they get angry. And I was so focused on that aspect of the training. And so it has been years of really, changing, evolving the way we do training. We used to do training that would take a day and a half. And when I think about that, I was so proud of it at the time, thinking, man, we cover everything, soup to nuts. We're giving them everything they need. They're going to be solid. Well, as adult learners, 12 hours of training over 2 days, that's not going to cut it, Robin. That's not going to do it. So, we've evolved in our learning. I've evolved in our learning. My team has evolved. And so these are our guiding values that we have within the team that works in Allegheny County. And that's really looking at how do we create a culture of learning? And so very quickly, I just want to share these with you. So we think about things in terms of a collaborative effort. How do we really make sure that we're partnering with our subject matter experts? Can we do trainings where, if we are teaching the assessment with behavioral health service coordinators, for instance, can we have a service coordinator be part of the trainer with us? So this way they can talk about their experience, not their life experience, their work experience. How do they use that assessment? So again, how can we bring in the subject matter experts? We have not an individual. See, I'm reading the chat. I need to stop doing that. I apologize, everybody. I cannot multitask, and I shouldn't. We have a unit in the Department of Human Services in Allegheny County that is made up of young individuals that have had lived experience. It's the Youth Support Partner Unit. And when we do the FAST assessment with our families, the Youth Strengths section, we have some of our youth support partners actually do that aspect of the conversation with members of the family. And so we have talked about they should be training that part. They should be in that training with us, and we haven't done it yet. But think about the power of that. So I'm outing myself to say that's something I need to do to really push that idea of collaboration. But think about in your own agency, jurisdiction, wherever you're training, where could you be collaborating that might have an impact or enhance the trainings that you're doing? Could it also be if you are doing CANS and ANZA? Sarah, did you say that? Or who said that? Kim, you were saying the CANZA. So is it possible for those folks that serve both children and youth, could you have someone come in and talk about that experience as part of the training for new staff? Just some ideas again about how do you get those subject matter experts in there. And if you have a family-run organization, could you have family members either be part of the training? Could you do a video of families talking about what their experience has been to have a CANS conversation, what that's felt like, how it's been powerful for them? How it's been really horrible when it hasn't been a family-led conversation, when it's been deficit-based. So thinking again about using these different ways of collaboration to infuse your training. Accessible. And again, this is, a no-brainer for all of us, but, we have such diversity we are training, we are with all sorts of different people and populations. So we have to really think about how do we become more diverse in the type of trainings that we offer and the type of resources that we utilize. So I think we see this a lot now. I mean, this isn't so cutting edge anymore, but we were so excited when we started doing animation as part of our trainings because that felt new and it gave a different way of people accessing trainings being accessible. But now with COVID, it forced us to speed up everything in a virtual world, right? So really thinking about if we're going to be virtual and, maybe when things are all different or back to a new normal and we go in person, maybe there's going to be hybrid. Maybe there's value in being online and remote, but how do we still connect in an engaging way? There's so many different ways that we can still do that. There's so many ways that we can utilize the breakout rooms. There's so many ways that we can do real play or role play in a virtual breakout room. You know what I mean? So how are these things that we can do? How can we do simulations, maybe more scripted, but still do it in a virtual world? So thinking about how can we be accessible just both in the virtual world, but then if we go back to in person, also making it available in different places. Did someone have a question or a comment? Okay, maybe I just heard a blip. All right, innovation. And that again is all about, I sort of dived into that when I mentioned gaming, but it's how do we use different technologies? The fact that TCOM has the YouTube channel, man, we should be hitting that all the time, using that as part of a resource and training, directing people to that. With that YSP unit, that youth support partner unit that I mentioned to you, we're in the process right now of doing a whole series of trainings that'll be done through a podcast. Like that's how we have to know our audience, right? How do we get to our young adults? They're all about podcasts. So that's how we're going to do a new series of trainings. And then they're going to be embedded in training in different way. So think about who are you training? What are different ways that you can use different forms of technology? And then I also want to say, let's go back to some of our old basics. We forget how critical it can be to bring out some of those old ways that we used to teach and maybe just like deconstruct it. I've been watching cooking shows. It's all about deconstructing things, but think about like we used to do this candy game that and some of you who've seen it before and probably a lot of you use it, pick a candy and then you're forced to talk about, yourself because the candy means something. Well, we did that because we wanted people to feel or experience what it feels like to have to answer a question and think about what it feels like to be on the receiving end of that assessment. Well, maybe think about it in a different way and how can you do it in a virtual world? I don't have the answer to that right now, but again, thinking about taking those old ways of training and reconstructing it and changing it up. So being innovative, there's all sorts of different ways you can do that. And then finally, experiential. And, it's all about the experience because for the learner, the adult learner, they want to be doing things. They want to be, putting in what they know and putting it into action. And so that's where I think, Alacia, I'm going to turn it over to you to really talk about how for the adult learner, it's so important to be able to understand, what are some of those ways that we can really work with an adult learner?
Thanks, Robin. So this is really the basics of adult learning, and some of you may have a lot of experience in education around adult learning theory and principles, and some of you might not. Some of you might have different roles, and you're kind of just now in this role of training the cans and ANZA. But I think that the core understanding that we need to take away in any trainings is that adults learn differently than children and youth, and adults are very connected to how the information that they're getting is going to benefit them and apply to their work or their lives. So these are the core principles or assumptions of adult learners. And I just want to go through them really quickly because I think this foundational knowledge, you kind of walk away, if you're not already familiar with adult learning principles, with just a little bit of a different worldview on how we adults take in information and retain it. So self-concept, this is pretty simple, but it's the idea that adults are not dependent on someone else for their learning anymore. They are self-directed. So what we did with y'all when we had you identify your learning goal, that was a way, a strategy to put the power into your hands as an adult learner, to help to have you take ownership of your learning and identify, this is my goal, this is what I want to get out of this training. And even if you're talking about it or just typing it in, it helps to solidify that and allows you to really be more a director of your own learning. So we think about like old time classroom, I said old time, but it's really not been that long, but we were sitting for 8-hour training days and, just throwing all this information at adults. And it's really about how can you set the stage to put that adult in the driver's seat of their learning. Same with the families and engagement, right? In the whole process of TCOM and assessment, we want to put the families in the driver's seat so that they feel empowered and directed, self-directed. So that's just one piece of this. The next one is the adult learner experience. Adults have been through a lot. We all have a whole story and journey that we have experienced throughout our lifetime, and that creates a bank, like a repository of all these things that have formed us into who we are. So everyone comes to the table to learn with a different set of experiences, a different ideas, values, and we as trainers want to respect that and understand that we, everyone's going to learn a little bit differently based on those experiences, and learning itself is based on experiences. So we want to provide the learner with an experiential environment or, experiential activities so that this is adding to their experiences and allowing them to really continue to learn and build as an adult. It's not just about the classroom, it's about every single thing that we do in life, every interaction. The next one's readiness to learn. And this is the idea that the motivation and the level of readiness that an adult brings to the table when they're learning really has to do with their identity, their social roles, their purposes, their meaning in their life. So we want to be intentional about connecting what we're teaching them about TCOM with who they are and their role as a clinician, their purpose in truly helping people, using the idea of the shared vision. Most people come into the field of human services with an idea that I want to make things better for other humans. I want to support families. I want to make things easy. I want to help people. So connecting TCOM and assessments to that, to meaning and purpose, is really a great message to use to help to increase buy-in. And we're going to talk more about that, but I think that's a key piece. Adults are more open and motivated and ready when it connects to them personally. Orientation to learning. So this one is the idea that adults don't want to just sit here and hear about a subject. And I feel like Robin and I have been like talking to you a lot and not really orienting you into problem solving activities and things yet at this point, but we're going to get there. But adults don't want to just sit and hear about a subject for hours. They are oriented to being able to problem solve. I understand as an adult that there's this issue or this thing that I need, and how can I solve this with this information that you're giving me or with these activities? So it's really about problem-oriented types of learning and not just throwing subject information at somebody. And the last one is motivational learners. Adults are intrinsic. As we get older, we get less away from an extrinsic motivation. And it's really more about meaning. It's more about how do we spark and inspire people rather than just saying, you have to do this training because these assessments are due within 30 days and they need to inform your plan. And if you don't, then you're going to get in trouble. Like, we want to inspire people at their core, at their meaning, their social roles, their experiences based in life, and allow them to direct that. So like I say all of these things and I went into each of these, but if you kind of think about this as a whole, the key here is like, we want to connect the adult learner to how the TCOM information, to how the tools, to how the the assessment, these conversations are really going to be beneficial to them and their roles in serving others, and really focusing on that practical application piece. It's so key. So in our trainings now, and we've learned this because we've struggled with buy-in, like I think most jurisdictions do at some point, tying the messaging at the beginning of a training and tying in the idea that these assessments are helpful, they're beneficial to the families, to the individuals, they're beneficial to you, to your supervisor, to the system, really helps to promote that investment. So just want to drive that home, and we're going to talk more about the different messaging and strategies that we use, but key piece, tie it to what it looks like in their day-to-day lives and how it's going to make their lives easier, what the benefits are. So this is just a quote about experiential learning, because I think summing up adult learners, it's not about just telling people anymore. That's what you might think of in a traditional classroom, but what we want to take it a step further and really involve an adult learner and help them to experience, whether it is viewing, Dan's video and a demonstration of what it looks like to engage, but also engaging them in practicing, or following up with them after training and having them think and reflect on what their experiences are themselves and how they could improve. So it's really about focusing on that experiential piece a lot more than just like lecture and things like that. So just to kind of drive that piece home, and really when you think about it, it can shift your view of training. A lot of you may already be there in the understanding of adult learning, but I think we want to really think about the differences and the specific needs of adults when we develop and implement and facilitate our trainings. Like it's really key. So this is just an annotation activity that we wanted to do, and it might be a little bit silly, but we want to understand where you all are at as far as being intentional about incorporating or using some of the adult learning principles and best practices in your trainings. And this is a self-reflection, and you can just use a star or a shape in annotation or something like that. You don't have to put your name up, because so for that you want to click on stamp, and you can just maybe like stamp where you think you are as far as understanding the principles and practices of adult learning. And this is part of us reflecting and giving you an opportunity to reflect about maybe, do I want to dig deeper into these theories? And it's also for, Robin and I and for TCOM to kind of get an understanding of where our training group is at and how we can do better in really supporting you around this area. So
I can just say, Alacia, it's really okay if you find yourself that you're at a pony level, that you haven't thought a lot about adult theory, or you're not thinking about it intentionally in how you're putting it into practice with training. And I think it's wonderful that a lot of you are hitting it at light. It's how do you grow some of those ideas so that, again, you can become we can really think about how do we really get that learner more committed, more invested in the training, because that's so much of what we were all saying when we were introducing yourselves and the ideas that you were trying to get at. How do we get them engaged? How do we get them, bought into, not bought in, that's my language, I apologize, but, really involved in the training so that it's not just something that they're doing. So it's great to see that there's a lot of you, in that mid phase with adult learning, that you're thinking about it, that you're utilizing some of it. And I know we're kind of behind on time, but Alacia, I'm wondering if anyone wants to make a comment about how they're utilizing some of the adult learning.
So just one thing I want to mention, because I feel like you might be like, okay, so are we sitting here just learning about adult learning theory, or are we going to get to TCOM stuff? So Robin and I have talked to you about some of this more theoretical stuff, and we wanted to infuse this intentionally into our booster session this year. But as we move forward, we are going to get more into concrete examples of how to do this. We're going to be able to share more resources with you as far as what we've done, or different ideas, get into more of that virtual piece that a lot of you asked for in your learning goals. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, that this was really setting the stage. And as we move forward, we're going to get into more of the practical things that are much more beneficial for an adult learner than just like throwing theory at you. So I just wanted to mention that. But anyone have any comments or questions or thoughts or tips or like tidbits about any of this stuff?
And I see, if you haven't used annotation before, I would strongly recommend it, because that's another way of getting people engaged in the virtual training as well. We didn't use polls in this particular training today, and I think polls are fantastic. We like to mix it up with polls, doing the annotation, doing Jamboard, thinking about for every, 10 to 15 minutes, where is an activity going to fit? Because you need to have, as much activity as possible in your training so that you're breaking up the learning process.
And I want to just point this out. Lynn, you made a comment in chat, and I appreciate it so much. And it really emphasizes the idea of a parallel process. And you mentioned that those being assessed might not understand the tools or be able to appreciate this. And how can we do better at informing and educating those that are being assessed? So I think as trainers, we need to think about that, as well as how we support our workforce in completing and engaging in the assessments. And we've been brainstorming a little bit about that in Allegheny County, as far as, how can we better really support families in understanding TCOM and the YouTube channel resources. So just wanted to put that plug in, and thank you for saying that, Lynn. All right, we're good to move?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I'm still annotating.
Okay, I'm going to speed through some of this because I think we've already hit on these big things about spaced education. And for those of you that aren't as familiar with spaced education, please reach out to Alacia or I, because we can spend a lot more time with you on it. And Alacia is going to go through a model that we use in Allegheny County. But again, it's the idea that not just doing one training and then you're done. It's really this idea that you're building blocks, that you break up training so that, again, it's reinforcing the practical application. It's doing what you might consider pre-work ahead of time. Maybe you have 3 or 4 in a series, but that's really this idea of spaced education. We do a lot of micro learnings, again, very topical. It's condensed content material. A lot of times we might focus on an aspect of the assessment. So, how to have a difficult conversation, how to engage. So like a 5-minute training on that. And then ongoing coaching is absolutely critical, because with coaching, it's different than meeting with a supervisor, because I think supervisors play a critical role in assessment and having, supervisors be trained in how they utilize it in supervision and asking about it, and even, supporting their staff. But if you can have a coaching role where you have learners that can be safe and explore and ask questions about their experience as they're using the assessments, you can have really rich conversation and rich learning. And then you see people feeling more and more comfortable with having CANS conversations or ANZA conversations. And when they're more comfortable, guess what? They use it more, and they use it in a meaningful way. Okay, Alacia. I'm going to try to go through these really quickly. So just some things to think about in the virtual world. Expanded technology, and we have some trainer considerations, participant considerations, and netiquette. Next slide. So this is just a list, and this is for all of you as a reference. Again, we just listed different technology, different platforms, different software that you might utilize when you think about creating infographics. We have a library now of different infographics, gaming, animated videos, things like that. So you'll have this list.
Yeah, and just I saw that in the chat, some of you are already throwing out different ideas of different technology that you might use in your training. So please continue to do that. Like, this is a community of learning with TCOM. These are just some of the things that we've almost been forced to start to use because of the pandemic. And we had to figure out, like, okay, how do we take this in-person training and switch this over to virtual and still be engaging and interactive and experiential. So this is a list of some of the tools we've used, but this isn't everything. So if you use some
Oh
other
gosh, no.
throw it in the chat, and I think that as a community we can come up and kind of share some ideas around this, and we'll get into more about how we use some of these as we move through too.
Okay, this is a list of trainer considerations. And I'm just looking here, I'm trying to be cognizant of the time. I think it's really important for as trainers to take a few minutes, especially as new trainers, and look at some of these considerations, trying to be yourself and not somebody else, really utilizing what your personality skills are, minimizing the multitasking. I can't stress that enough. As a trainer, especially when you're in the virtual world, turning off all the different programs that are on your computer, closing up things so that you can be fully present. Incorporating mindfulness is so important. And again, because we are, aren't we rewarded for multitasking? I mean, we really are rewarded for multitasking. And what does that do? That takes away our brain focus and activity because we're shooting in all different directions. I'm clearly not a neuroscientist here, but the idea is that if we can be focused and present, we are going to learn more. So it's really about how can we greet our learners in a way that helps them feel very present. I really wanted to, and I skipped right over it. So again, another error on my end, to have you all come in and just do some deep breathing. And there's brain science around that, making space in the brain for you to be able to take in that information, even listening to music. It wasn't just because I love 70s music. It was also to have you start, just settling in, relaxing, maybe trying to get some of that stuff off your mind that you're constantly, as we all are doing, multitasking in our brain. So again, thinking about that, tracking participation. I will send you, as part of the materials we send out, there's a great way of just how you can call on different people in different ways, because people need to be seen. They need to be called on, utilizing their names when you're in that virtual world, being able to say something like, okay, Lydia, I see you have a question, Kathleen and Jessica. We're going to go in that order, making sure you're saying the names, giving the order out, and then following up in that order. So we will send you those kinds of like instructional guides, since we don't have the time today, but those are the kind of things, little things like that, that again, bring the person back into that more intimate virtual world. Alacia, do you want to skip to the next one? The next one's about the participant considerations, and this is about you thinking about the participant. So again, even though we've become much more experienced in this virtual world, we still recommend sending out the information about what are the training expectations. And we would want this actually, whether it's virtual or not, but what are your training expectations ahead of time? But then also, what is the link? What's the login information so that they can practice if they need to, making sure that all of that works. If you're in the position to do so, and we understand not every agency is able to do this, but if you can offer pre-TA computer or network support so that someone knows that they can reach out, providing any netiquette or virtual best practice, again, so no one's surprised at what we're asking them to do. Review the platform tools at the start of the training. We love doing that. That's like a warm-up where we might show you something using Annotate, and then later in the training, we're going to use Annotate again, so it's not something new to people. So doing that soft warm-up for folks so they get that practice. Being available pre and post training like you would be in the real world. So when people, linger around when you're packing stuff up, the same thing in the virtual world. being available if people want to just chat as you're leaving. And then here's something that's super important, because this tone has changed, I feel. Remembering that screen fatigue is real. When we first went virtual, it was everyone needs to have their cameras on all the time. It's adamant we need to do that. Well, you know what? Screen fatigue is real, and people need to have their cameras off on occasion. And there's real reasons why they need to have it. So being flexible about that. And so building in those breaks, which we're going to take in a minute. So I'm going to try to do these next couple things really, really quickly, and then we will take a 5-minute break. Okay, yes, we will. So these are a couple just additional resources I'm going to just point out to all of you. Alacia will do them lickety split. Okay, this is the 5 key principles to self-assess for your approach as a facilitator. This actually is a questionnaire that we will send out to all of you, but it's something that you can ask yourself. How am I demonstrating compassion as a facilitator? How am I being curious as a facilitator? Am I asking open-ended, powerful questions? Am I being able to be open there? So it makes you think a little bit differently about your own training style and skills, and it's a good reminder of things. So we'll send that out. 4-7-8 breathing. This is a lifesaver. And if we have time at the end of this training, I'm going to have us all do it. Believe it or not, I'm also in becoming a trainer in mindfulness. So that's why I'm also probably saying this so much, but I can't stress enough how important taking a few seconds with your group to do some deep breathing. When they come back after a break, bringing back folks and settling in that way, again, either with some music or some deep breathing, clearing the brain, encourage that so much. And you as a trainer, before you start, you need to also prepare yourself. Okay, next one. Here's a trainer's checklist. So there's some ideas on what you need to do as part of pre-training, deciding on technology. What is your training invite going to look like, including expectations, designing your curriculum. When we look at during the training, what are some things that you need to be thinking about? And then post-training. This is a really basic one, but something to give you an idea of how you may think about this, especially if you're a newer trainer. This could be helpful. And then Netiquette 101. This might be something that you would want to send out as part of the welcoming email to say, you know, you're going to be attending this training. Here are some considerations for netiquette so that that learner knows what to expect. And I think we are going to take a 5-minute break. It's 12:02. I'm going to play music. You can shut your cameras off. When the music is over, we'll get started again. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good, quick break.
All right. So welcome back. I hope everyone got to get up and stretch, get a drink, and, you know, just take care of yourself for a couple minutes there. I know 5 minutes is such a short break, but we have so much we want to get through with you all. And I was just mentioning to Lynn and Robin on break that I really, really do hope that you guys are able to come to part 2 later. I understand if you have other commitments, we understand, but part 2 is really going to be not just a continuation of what we're discussing here, but also really diving into a discussion with you all so that we can really get an understanding of what your needs are as far as ongoing training support for trainers. Your feedback is going to be so critical. So I hope you can come later. All right, so we are diving into race day now. And the first thing we're going to do is some breakout rooms. And in our breakout rooms, we have 2 things we want you to focus on. A, what is one of the most successful training strategies, tools, or activities that you've used? And B, what's your biggest training challenge? So we're going to break you into groups. We have 46 people in here now. So that number definitely doubled. I will split you into groups of 5 or 6-ish, and we will give you about 8 minutes, 10 minutes to have the discussion with with your group, and then we're going to debrief as a larger group. So we ask that in your group, we'll give you a 2-minute warning to start wrapping up, and if you could identify like a spokesperson in your group and just a couple like 3 to 4 highlights of the things that really stood out or common themes within your group. So let me get these breakout rooms up.
And while Alacia's doing that, let me remind you, really share relentlessly. If there's a really good activity that's been really critical for you and your team, please share with others, because we're looking to see how can we really make these trainings useful and successful for everyone. And also, the challenges, really think through what have been the really most difficult pieces of it. Is it technology? Is it a certain aspect of the training? Is it the ongoing training? Are there elements that you need support with? So when you get into your rooms, make sure you have a person that would be willing to speak out for the group.
There are going to be 7 breakout rooms, 5 to 6 people per room. So I'm going to start them now, and we'll give you 10 minutes to discuss. So we'll come back at 12:20.
And you're off. I wanted to do that.
All right, 10 minutes. All right, everybody should be back. So let's just take a minute or so for each of the groups to report out on what main things kind of stood out in your discussions. And we really hope that within your groups, you got more than just 1 or 2 takeaways from it, but let's just share out with the larger group. So do we have a volunteer to report out first?
I will.
Amy?
Okay. So we had, so with the successes, people talked about incorporating things like stretch breaks, music, breathing, making the environment comfortable, and that they have found success in making people more comfortable, making the environment more comfortable, rather than just kind of it being a strict like training where people are sitting and listening to slides and focused solely on that. Other successes have been really around the practice scenarios or the vignettes, or that having people do the real kind of trying to struggle and negotiate the ratings with a small group, that they found that work to be really successful in helping people. Another person talked about using just a lot of different visuals and like annotating her slides as things are going on, and just kind of to engage people with more visual things. And then I think, with the challenges, we really identified kind of 2. One was staff engagement, and keeping people. I mean, I think the person that talked was from California. I'm from Nevada, and we had trainings, and then people weren't really using it, and so it was hard to keep people engaged. And then kind of circling back around and trying to re-engage people, that's been a challenge. And then I think probably all of us have experienced struggles with helping people pass the exam and focusing more on the exam, what's the correct rating, and and that sort of thing, as well as the last thing I'll say is about people thinking that they know what the ratings are and not consulting their manuals, and that's been a challenge. So
Great, thank you. That's a lot of good information, and I'm sure that across the group there's many that can agree, because I know that I do. So thank you, Amy. And would someone else like to share for their group?
I can go. This is Kim. I feel bad because Dan was in the middle of talking and then it took us back. So we might want to get more of what he had to say. We didn't quite get to the challenges as much, but we did get to a lot of successful things to use. So one thing was after after training, like within a clinic, developing like a competition on using that new skill, and a little reward at the end that works within the organization, integrating icebreakers throughout the training that are just kind of fun, that have people, might make them laugh, things like what was your favorite TV show when you were growing up or something like that, just to have that conversation and engagement in a different way. Somebody talked about using word scrambles in the virtual platform and having them like read something and then having a word scramble to get to actionable needs. So I thought that was pretty cool. Using the vignettes, a couple of people talked about using the vignettes, whether shortening it works better in a virtual platform, and then also how to take the vignettes that we have and copy and paste them in to make them a little bit user friendly within a virtual platform.
Mhm.
And then using one vignette throughout the training so that they're not trying to think about a bunch of different vignettes throughout. They've kind of got one that just keeps going throughout the training. And that was Dan's, and he got cut off. So Dan, I don't know if you want to add more to what you were trying to say, but I got that tiny bit that you were able to say. So.
Well, I do want to say that, and just I didn't get to say, but one of the benefits I found of moving virtuals is I find this training someone to score cans, especially I guess in my situation where I'm also teaching them how they do it on the app that they're going to do it on simultaneously, has actually been better virtual in a lot of ways. I find that just most of us talked about games and gamification, and what I see Yin's doing here in this presentation here with the annotations and the Jamboard, which is totally didn't expect, but a total bonus. But I find a lot of that has helped teach any TCOM tool, because there are tons of opportunities to practice and to do it over and over and over again.
I agree with you, Dan. I feel like having to go virtual suddenly as we did and, change things around, I feel like as a community, we've taken strides in really being able to find better, more creative ways to support staff. And yes, there's a ton of challenges with it too, but boy, did we come up with some cool resources and different creative things. So yes, thank you. All right, does the next group want to quickly share?
I could jump in and share from my group. Part of one of the successes we came up with actually kind of jump spread off of what you guys were saying. So that was that we do a group rating practice using a vignette during one of the introductory trainings. And thanks to the virtual format, we've been able to create this type of Microsoft form that we give them a link. The group goes in, they fill out their ratings, we bring the whole group back together, and we're able to look at one page where it's brought all of the ratings together on one screen, so we can look at it as a whole package. And as one of my group mates pointed out, that was something we were not doing in a real life setting, because people just had it on paper written down in front of them. So that was one big, useful thing that's kind of come out of this. And then another participant was talking about, and I thought this fit in with the adult learning theory, the idea of using real life examples from their own practice of how these things kind of tie in from the tools that they're teaching. So again, kind of attaching it to what people are doing so that it makes a little bit more sense for them. Otherwise, the challenges, we kind of summed it up into two larger ones. One is, as much as we like the virtual world because of that Microsoft form, the virtual world has also presented a bunch of challenges. We were, mentioning things like you have to be kind of bigger energy online because you just got this little frame. You're not kind of walking around a room or anything like that. So that can actually be a little bit more tiring in a shorter time frame than actually training in real life in front of people. Feeling distant from folks, right? Feeling like it's hard to connect. For me, I like to tell stories and jokes. I can't tell if I landed a joke if I can't see people laughing or smiling or any of that. So that's tough. And then the other big challenge that we kind of summed up was the idea of when the audience of folks that you're training doesn't really buy into the tool that you're training, particularly because it's been mandated to them. And so they just feel like it's something they just have to do, another thing to check off their list, more paperwork, that can be a challenge.
Absolutely. I think that's a common challenge for sure. And that goes back to that, like, even from the pre-work and the first discussions about the assessments, really that purpose, that meaning, that it's not just a form, which reflects the adult learner stuff. So, yes.
I think that's when also that collaborative value becomes really important. If you can have, a worker or a couple of workers who have used it become part of your training team, Really, really vital. Sarah, I just want to mention that you've got some folks really interested in the Microsoft form. So I don't know if you can in chat either give a little bit more information or connect with others, but I want to just make sure because I think that's something that some folks haven't heard about.
I will admit wholeheartedly, I have no idea how they did this. I was just on the receiving end of here's this fancy form you get to use.
Okay.
But if folks want to drop in their email address, I can certainly connect them with I can figure out who put it together. And Barry
awesome.
saying, ask Josh. So Josh Nellis would be who I was going to go to as well. So yeah, if folks want to drop in their email address, unless Josh is still on the line with us, I can connect them.
And we're going to be saving chat, and we're going to be, replying all to all of you with these different things. So, and Alacia, time check. It is 12:31.
Yeah, so did we have one or two groups that haven't shared yet? Do you want to try to quickly share out some of your findings?
I can go. Oh, go ahead.
We have Lisa and then Heather. How about that? Real quick.
Okay.
Lisa?
Okay, so what we found was helpful was using multiple activities and relating the learning to real world experiences. And I'm going to be real quick. And then what we had difficulty with was just engagement of participants, some technology issues for some people that are like living out in rural areas, just basic technology issues with the online stuff. And then just the getting buy-in, people actually wanting to use the tool.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for the quick summary. And Heather?
Okay, so some of our really great things that we talked about was using rating scenarios. So I guess that would be similar to having them rate the vignette together in breakout rooms. But what we do is we split into breakout rooms, and then we created rating scenarios for the FASTI and for the cans. And we have them go through and score those. And then we come together as a group and go over them and explain why things should be rated a certain way. Another thing that Hilda had mentioned is that she's doing Zoom Hangouts. She does that twice a week, and it's basically just an open space where anyone who has questions about TCOM or maybe a certain rating or something can come in and ask those questions and have them answered. Our biggest issues, I think, was getting, veterans excited to use the tools. So one is getting people who have been using or doing this for many years. They're not really excited about this, and they just think that something else is going to change. We have that problem with DHHR. They've used so many tools in the past. They think that this is just something new that's going to go away next year. So getting them to really embrace it, as well as getting new people who have to sit through the training to really embrace it and accept TCOM and use it.
Thank you, Heather. I think the veterans, that's something that I saw some of you shaking your heads to. That is a tough challenge. And I think if you can, really champion one of those veterans, even if it's just one, that can have a domino effect, because that can change the momentum if you can get one to champion and really understand the value in that. And I also want to say, I love the Zoom Hangout idea. Again, trying to create that connection in any way, even in the virtual world. So these are fantastic. We want to thank all of you for sharing. I'm going to pivot it back to Alacia so that we can, in these next 20 some minutes, just hit on some high notes to give you some more tips and ideas.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone. This was great.
I love the word Hangouts. We do Zoom office hours following training, but I love Hangouts. I think we might have to steal shamelessly and call them Hangouts.
Hangouts sound so much more inviting, don't they? Like, I love that.
All right, so what we have here for you, and I think that this might be one really good takeaway, and we are not telling you that this is what your training has to look like, but this is the space education model that we came up with in Allegheny County. And I think that for the material we have between now and 1 o'clock, or even this whole morning session, this might be a really useful resource for you. So just quickly, I want to go over this because the remainder of the time and in this afternoon, we're going to go through kind of these different pieces all the way up through what we do for post-training. The pre-training, we're going to go into a little more detail in a second about this, but it is so key and it really does help with the buy-in piece. Our pre-training is very focused on why do we assess? Again, practical application. How is this going to fit into your life? So we do a little short video and a couple like super easy question and answers. And then they do a mini vignette, super short. They don't even rate anything. It's just like a scenario. What are the needs and what are the strengths that you see here? No right or wrong answers, just practice. And then the other part of our pre-training or pre-work is our opportunity to get to know the learners so that we can direct this learner and meet their learning needs. So they're able to identify a learning goal, their learning style, any accommodations they would need. So that gives us information as trainers so that we can be agile and adapt our training, but it also helps to put them in the driver's seat of their learning. We can share this pre-work with you, and we are going to go into a little more detail about it in a second. And then our virtual live session is cut down to 3.5 hours. And this was tough. We went from 8 to 3.5. Well, not 8 because with breaks, but in our live virtual, we really learned that we have to focus on rating, practice, and getting people ready for their test. There's so much more to the assessment: engagement, trauma-informed care, communication, race and diversity. So we hit a lot of those things in our post-training. During our live virtual session, we're very much focused on the mechanics of the actual assessment. However, we do still start out with setting the tone, which is super key, and that why do we assess, talking about the pre-work. Then the rest of it's all building on rating practice, understanding structure and items and things like that. And our post-training is set up where we have our certification exam through the Parade site. And that is the first thing that they need to do after training. We only give 3 days to complete it. And then we do offer coaching, and I know Parade offers coaching as well in some forms for various jurisdictions. So it might look different across different agencies or places. But that certification exam is the first part of the post-training. Once they pass that, we have some post-training modules that we do send out through email that they complete. So one is the IT system. Most of us probably have some type of IT system that people have to learn. Dan, I heard you say you train it simultaneously. Our model, we have a post-training video, and then they're required to set up their account in our specific system. Sure, that looks different from everyone, but it's still key because you can't just like train them in this tool and then have them not understand what they need to do as far as entering the information. We have an engagement module, and we have a trauma-informed module. All of those 3 are due 10 days post-training. And then a little more spaced out, we do a service planning, which is a newer addition to our curriculum. And we're going to go over that in part 2. So again, try to come back to part 2. But the service planning workshop is a really interesting and engaging, completely virtual workshop. There's no, we're not presenting in Zoom at all. It's all through survey software. But we'll show you that a little bit later.
And a couple questions. If I could just add, Alacia, if the thing that's really important about the spacing is the time elements. You don't want to have too much time in between some of this so that you can have that learner engaged and building off of what they've learned so that they can again be out utilizing this as quickly as possible. And then the other piece of this is with the pre-training work. That's something that we've built into Qualtrics. And that's the survey software that we use. But again, everyone has different resources that are available to them. And some are more, have more available to them than others. But you can do a lot of this in something as simple as SurveyMonkey. So I wanted to mention that as well, that there's a lot of flexibility with where you can access this kind of resources. Okay.
Yeah, LMS systems, a lot of you may have LMS systems. We specifically can't use ours because of some technicalities with external providers. So we had to improvise. Qualtrics works great. it is an actually really great tool for creating these learning modules and sending them out and tracking them and having reports. SurveyMonkey's probably just as good. So any questions or thoughts about this? Again, this is just to help to stimulate some ideas for you maybe, or, you know, think outside of the box. And in all humility, I'll say this, we have this spaced education module that's ranging from 1 week before training up to 30 days after. A really good, true space education, like there's room for improvement with this. Basically, we could space this out up to 6 months, up to a year, up to their recertification date, where we're sending them micro learnings that are allowing them to reflect on what's happening in their life. You know, what is one challenge you've had with engaging a family? What's one success? We just did that with you guys with training, but simple things like that that allow people to reflect and think back, and then learn and grow. Or a training arcade, a game, things like that, spaced out all the way over, you know, 6 months or longer or whatever. So we're aiming for that. We're trying to develop a more spaced model. And the other benefit to having a spaced education model like that is the data you can collect from it is going to tell you, are people, you know, really utilizing the assessment in meaningful ways? So your evaluation model, if you use like Kirkpatrick's or something like that, could be embedded in that, in the spaced education piece as well. So just to throw that out there.
And one of the comments that was made is the idea that, you know, folks don't show up with the pre-work done. We've been pretty fortunate. And so I don't know if folks have ideas about that. Alacia, I don't know if you want to make a comment on that.
Yeah, people don't always do the pre-work. So one thing, we send a reminder out. So they get an email about a week before, and then they get another email. If we're able to, we do CC supervisors on that too, to help to reinforce it, not to be, you know, punitive, but to just, you know, be collaborative. And then you'll see as we dive into our training, which will probably be in part 2 because of time, but we incorporate that pre-work again into the beginning of our training. We show them what they typed into their pre-work as a group. We summarize that and show it to people and share it back. So the people who didn't do the pre-work are still getting an idea of what was in there. We circle back to the questions in the vignette, but I do agree with that challenge. It's hard to, like someone said in the beginning, you know, people are overworked and understaffed. They don't have the time to really complete these extra things. So I would say keep it as concise as possible. Ours is short, it's not long, but it gives them that foundational, that baseline.
Okay.
All right, let's see what we have here, because honestly, I don't know how far we're going to get. Robin, I'll hand it back to you at about 5 till.
Yeah, but why don't we just do some highlights right now? And seeing that, you know, again, people are talking about that, how do we get folks to get the work done? That's such a larger conversation, because it also is about creating this culture of learning where you really need to have your buy-in from administration. So we'll stay on after this presentation if folks want to stay on for a little bit longer. But Alacia, maybe you could do quickly the pre-training so that people can see what that looks like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know I just talked about this, but I guess I'll dive a little bit more into the details of it. And we can probably send you a link to this too, so that you can actually see it. I don't think we have time to go through it right now, but we could send you a link of it. And I can also send you an example of what our email looks like if you feel like that might be beneficial. I'm making a list of all the stuff we're sending.
Yeah.
But so this email we send includes basically their training folder if we were in real life. So all the resources, the manual, the score sheet, all of that stuff is included in this email. Training, logistics, information, your Zoom link, you know, some information on etiquette, that's all included in this email. And then your link to, when we say the survey, that is your pre-work. And the pre-work includes we have an intro video, which we have in here, and I don't know that we'll have time to watch it today, but we can send it to you to watch. It's super basic, but it's all about the buy-in. It's all about, hey, here's some assessments that are going to help make your lives easier and help families that we serve through engagement, communication, and planning. And then we ask them a few knowledge check questions about that. And then we have the mini vignette story and have them practice thinking about needs and strengths, which is the first layer in starting to practice ratings and vignettes. So we're starting it then. And then the second half of the survey is really about the learning style. So I kind of mentioned that already. But what we can do for you all is send you link to the survey. I'll make a copy of it and send it so you have your own like TCOM booster session link to the pre-training survey for you to see it. Robin, I think I'm going to skip the video.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's embedded. What we did is you have so much on these PowerPoints that I know it's overwhelming, but the thought is when you have time and you're going to settle down in a few days, you can go through these and you'll be able to play the video. You'll be able to digest this and pick out the things that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, and you're putting the link in the chat, or we'll just get it from the slides you were saying?
You'll get it from the slides, but we'll also, yeah, it's in the slides. So I don't think we need to send the link. It's embedded right in there.
It's also in the pre-work. So when I send you the pre-work link, it's the first thing you see when you open that up.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a good resource for everyone. You know, build, we're all sharing, but you know, all of our needs are different in our different jurisdictions. So this is just about setting the tone. So here we are, we've done the pre-work. People have, you know, got that foundational knowledge, gave us some knowledge. So when we start training, what are some really key pieces that we need to do as TCOM trainers to set this tone? I'm not going to go into a ton of details here. We probably know a lot of this stuff already, but group agreements. And we have an example of the group agreements that we use in the following slides for your reference as well. And then creating the individual time for the learner. So this is really going back to that self-directed piece in adult learning. This is, you know, whether it's truth cards, engaging with them in the private chat, office hours. One thing we did before we went virtual was we would have people sit down and write their learning objective. Before we shared our learning objectives, what is your learning objective? What is your goal for the day? And then we would come back to that later. Did you meet your learning objective? And what else do you need? So it's really giving them that opportunity to direct their own learning. Settling in, mindfulness, and we've talked about that. Some of the successes that you all have had is really starting with some positivity, music, mindfulness, all that stuff. Then the pre-training survey results, the pre-work assignments, I'm going to show you that in just one quick second in the way that we do that so you could see it. Going over the learning objectives. I don't know if anyone uses self-guided note sheets, but that's another really beneficial way in putting someone in the driver's seat of their learning. So this is a while ago. We stepped away from giving someone the copy of the PowerPoint into giving them a guided note sheet where they can use their brain to process the information and capture it in their own individual way as far as what it means to them. Super helpful. And then the messaging back to that buy-in, the messaging as far as the shared vision, the purpose of the tools, and whatever message you might use to really capture that attention. So these are just some parts of, you know, things to think about when you're setting the tone for the training. And I'm just going to click forward to a couple things here that I want to show you in this part of your trainer's toolbox. So when you see these slides, extra, these are all resources for you to use. We do not have time to go through them, but I want to show you a couple things. Group agreements. All right, this right here. So we use an infographic, and every time we do a training, we individualize this to match what the group said in their pre-work. And this isn't the knowledge check piece. This is more about what they want to get out of the learning. So what's your learning objective? What do you feel you really want to learn about today? What is your learning style? And an open-ended question is this training will be successful if. We share this in every training. And I think this reinforces the pre-work and also really reinforces that self-directed learning. So I just wanted to share this with you all as a way to really engage people from the beginning of the training, because they're like, wait, you heard me. You actually looked at what I put in there. You actually care about what I want to get out of this training. And they're like, oh, I wrote that and it's on there. So it just creates that investment. So wanted to point that out.
And also, Alacia, if I can add, you're also tailoring it too. So when you see that, you know, the instructor sharing real stories, or that it's going to be thorough or sharing personal stories. We try to adapt that as well as much as we can, so that, again, it's reinforcing that they've made a statement, we're responding to it. So it's that two-way communication with the trainer and the learner.
Yep. This is an example of a guided note sheet. You can, maybe you already have one or create one that really aligns with the key concepts that you're sharing in your training. But I think TCOM, we have some universal key concepts as far as the 6 key principles, the ratings, and things like that. There is a back to this page that's open for notes too, but we just wanted to kind of show you this infographic that we've been using to, rather than giving people the PowerPoint, because people have they're just going to read through it. They're just going to read. And I'm thinking now, like, we should have created something like this for this training. We really should have. What are your key takeaways as a trainer today and things like that. So I just wanted to show that example to you. These are the learning objectives that we share at the beginning of our training. And this is a quite robust set of learning objectives. This is a lot. And like, if you think about really achieving this learning objective, it's not happening in 3 hours. Right. It's not. Honestly, even our space education model I showed you, that's a week before and 30 days after, we could do a lot better at reinforcing these objectives if we space it out longer. The first learning objective you see here is really what I think we all struggle with in training, is really getting people to pass the test and understand the ratings and applying them to the item. So it's literally reliably using the tool by accurately rating the items. So that's a big focus of that 3-hour virtual session that we do. But there's also so many other parts of the assessment that are so important in really making sure that we're holistic in approaching families and working with families in a trauma-informed way, that we're engaging in building that relationship, that we're using the assessments for planning, and that we're using the assessments to communicate across the team. And then also, as far as TCOM, across the system. So how are we doing that as a system? These are like, I feel like the golden nuggets, and we need to continue to try to work towards these in making sure that we're addressing these in our trainings.
And we can, I'm sorry, Alacia, go on.
I was just going to say the trauma-informed piece, the engagement, the planning, and the communication is really coming more in our post-training modules at this point in time, because we learned in 3 hours, we got to focus on the rating piece. So I just wanted to share this with you all. Robin, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we consistently, for our staff, they're hearing the components of engagement, planning, and communication when we're talking about the TCOM assessments. So they'll see it in the TCOM learning objectives. They'll see it in the pre-work activities. They will see it in the PowerPoint slides that they're given in the training. They'll see it in some of the follow-up work that we do. So again, we're trying to be very consistent and reinforce those messages that this is not something that you just do to someone. This is how you are acting. This is how you engage. These are all the tools, or not tools, but the framework for which you're going to plan, how you're going to communicate. So those 3 components are heard over and over again.
I literally am to a point where when I'm training, I tell people, this is like the #1 takeaway. This is how this fits into your life on a day-to-day basis. This is how these assessments make your job easier. This is how it makes the outcomes for your families better. This is how you communicate with your supervisor. Like, this is really the purpose and the benefits of the tool. And I feel like when we think about adult learners and we think about practical application, that's our buy-in. This is meant, like Robin said, it's mentioned all throughout, but engagement, communication, and planning, if you use the tool correctly and you don't just, enter it in the system and never look at it, and you use it in these ways, your jobs are going to be easier. The communication is going to be smoother. You're going to navigate the system in a more efficient way. So that's just, I drive that part home big time in training.
She does.
I just feel like it's so important. And if not, they're just like, this is just something I have to rate and put in the system. So it's just so critical to me. And this is just a shared vision. We use this slide. Just 1 minute, Robin. So one thing we do in our trainings is we have people identify their purpose in the field. This is our icebreaker in a poll everywhere word cloud. What is your purpose in this field? And a lot of people are like, I want to help people. I want to support people. I want to empower families. And then we have them introduce themselves and talk about their word. And then we pull up the shared vision and say, these assessments are meant and built to support the shared vision that we all have in wanting families to be safe, healthy, happy, and able to pursue their dreams. And we reference TCOM and the Parade Foundation at this point, really setting that foundation. But it's another big buy-in and messaging component for adult learners that you're connecting this to my purpose in my life. Now I want to listen. Yeah. Now I know that this tool can make things align with what I want to do in my work. So it's meaningful.
And I think we have the word, yeah, we have the word cloud to show.
Yeah. Example of a word cloud. Poll everywhere. Great tool, and it's free. This is the candy activity, which if you, Robin mentioned it before, I'm not going to go over it. We don't have time, but simple, fun, engaging, and people love it. And I will pass it over to Robin now with 4 minutes left in the race.
Wow. And I think everyone probably, you might be spinning a little bit because we put a lot out there for you. And in some ways it was very intentional. And in other ways, I think we couldn't decide what all we wanted to highlight because there is so much that you can take. So what you have on the Associo site, as well as what we will be mailing out to all of you. But if you look, I think there are probably like 85 slides on this deck. And that's going to cover this morning's presentation, as well as what we're going to be going over this afternoon. And as we said, this is a twofer, right? So we're going to be highlighting, again, the strategies of different aspects of training, but we'll also be wanting to have more conversation about what are those needs, those ongoing needs for coaching. We really didn't even get to touch on coaching very much. We're hoping to talk a little bit about that this afternoon. But what I want to ask all of you is, with this presentation today, as well as the rest of the conference, because this just kicked off the conference, you're going to get a lot of information. In some ways, it's going to feel like overload. Take a break from it after you get all this information, and then next week or whichever day you're going to schedule some time to go through this material and then digest it and see, oh, this is what they were referencing, or, oh, you know what, I think I want to go back and get some more information about setting the tone. Okay, here are those extra slides. Now I get it, but you know what, I have a question. Okay, I can reach out to Alacia or I can reach out to Robin. And as you see here, we're going to send out additional resources. So we're going to send out that facilitator self-reflection. We're going to send out some of the, I have now forgotten because I didn't write it. Yeah, some of the stuff that Alacia wrote down. We're going to send all of that out to all of you by October 31st. So I figure that gives us a true deadline. So we'll send you those materials. So again, you don't have to know it all right now. And I don't want you to be overwhelmed by it because we broke our own rule, because there's the rule. This is another trainer rule. What is what you need to know versus what's nice to know? And you sometimes have to go with what needs to know. We broke that rule terribly just today. So we're going to own that. But to say, so go through this, schedule yourself some time, take an hour, but not now, not this week, sometime next week. Go through the materials and decide what might be useful to you. And then you all shared some excellent stuff. I saw some exchanges there about that Microsoft form. I think the Zoom Hangout, you were talking about incorporating breakout or icebreakers throughout your sessions. I think people are going to hop on Dan's video. There's all sorts of things. Use it. Share relentlessly. Or no. What is it?
Share relentlessly, steal shamelessly.
Yes, and steal shamelessly. So we want to encourage you, if you're able to come this afternoon, but there's also some other really good roundtable discussions. So we understand if you can't make it, but you won't be missing any of the slides because we'll have the same deck. We'll just have different slides we'll be going over, but you have the entirety. We can't thank you all so much. This really has been a horse race, to be funny here, but thank you for sticking in and having such great, feedback in the chat and comments. And just keep doing the great work you're all doing, because being trainers, man, it's so powerful. Like, you're just so freaking powerful in what you can do for your workforce. And that's pretty darn amazing. So sometimes you need to be reminded of that. Thank you all so much. We're going to be hanging out for a few minutes. So if you have questions, or if you have questions in the chat, we can type them up, or however you want to do that. But it is 1 o'clock on the dot.
Yeah, before we break, I'm going to go ahead and stop the sharing, and I'm going to share for those of you who are playing. I'm going to share the game code. So you should see that up on the screen right now. And then I'm also going to put the CE link in the chat box. So again, you just need to fill this out by the conference wrap up on Friday. So there you go. Everyone should have that. So you'll see this probably in every presentation that you go to, but I wanted to make sure you had it. I want to thank Alacia and Robin so much for your really interesting and useful presentation. And I want to thank all of you for attending today. So the game code there is growth. So feel free to write that down. And yeah, we encourage you to stick around if you have any questions. The two of them will be waiting for you. We'll leave the room open. And then please enjoy the rest of the conference.
And I just put our emails back in the chat. So because we didn't get to show them on the slide, so you can get them out of the chat. And if you didn't sign in, I'm not going to pull that back up right now, but if you could throw your email into the chat, that way you're on our list to send these resources out to. So if you want to drop your email in the chat, that would be amazing. If you didn't sign in on our links that we shared earlier. Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Happy TCOM conference. I think it was a good kickoff.